tying up another Carrie Stevens streamer today from the Hilliard book. This is called the Embden Fancy. That's spelled E-M-B-D-E-N. So Embden Fancy. Do not know where the name comes from. There's only one mention of it in the book, and that is just in reference to a picture of it on one of the pages in the book, as well as then the recipe in the book. So I don't know any history on this fly. It's an interesting fly. She's done a number of flies like this that have, this is a three-part wing. There's a blue hackle, an orange hackle, and a grizzly hackle dyed yellow in it. And she's done a number of those like that. But the throat on this is all mallard flank. And I have not done one of hers yet where the throat was just natural mallard flank. It was interesting to work with. I like the look of it. So that's the Embden Fancy. I'll get started tying. So I'm going to begin the Embden Fancy with my hook in the vise. This is a Partridge CS5-9X in a size 4. Debarb the hook. Now I'm going to attach my thread. The body on the Embden Fancy is silver tinsel. There's a couple of different ways you could do this. You could put in a single layer of tinsel from the back forward or a double layer. I prefer the double layer, primarily because it helps to make it a little bit smoother, and it's a little bit easier to do than a single, which I'll elaborate on in a minute. I'm using a Danville 210 Denier in white as a base layer. Because it's the tinsel you're putting down, you don't have to use white. You could use a black if you want to, or any other color. The tinsel will cover it up. I'm going to attach my thread maybe about 3 or 4 eye lengths behind the eye of the hook. This is where the body is going to end. That's where I'll tie in the belly and start tying in the throat. I'm just putting a base layer of thread down right now. Primary reason for that is I'm going to put some flex cement along the thread wraps here to help adhere the tinsel to it. When you are tying these flies, tinsel-bodied flies like this, with the Mylar tinsel, the Mylar has a whole lot of memory in it. If you slip, your fingers slip or whatever, you lose hold of it, it is going to unravel very, very easily. At the same time, if you don't add any protection to it and you're fishing it, and a fish happens to break that Mylar, same thing, it's just going to unravel. So the coat of flex cement, which is a Dave's flex cement, that's what I'm going to use here, just gives it a little added protection in that it will glue the tinsel down to the thread. It does help in terms of if you lose hold of it while you're wrapping it in, but the primary purpose is to secure that so that while you're fishing it, helps the fly to last a little bit longer. Now I'm going to stop just short of where I'm going to tie in the belly on this. And I'm going to go ahead and tie in my tinsel. For tinsel, I'm using, this is a Danville silver and gold Mylar tinsel in a size 12. And this is a silver side out. So I'm going to tie this in with the gold side up right here. Notice that the tag end is going to go right to the end of the body there. That's why I stopped a little short, because I'll put in a few wraps here, bringing this up to the end of the body. I'm going to fold this over, push that down to crease it a little bit so it stays out of the way. Now I'm going to put the flex cement on there. You could use, if you have another preferred head cement or something, you don't want a real thin head cement. You want it to have a little bit of body to it so that it sits on there, and the tinsel will actually kind of help spread it around on those thread wraps. And I put just a little coat underneath and on top, rubbing that around just to make certain I have it evenly coated. Some of that might ooze out. You don't want it dripping, but some of it might ooze out of the tinsel, and that's fine. Now, as I mentioned, I do 2 layers of tinsel, and the primary reason is as you're wrapping this tinsel in, often you'll get a gap between each wrap. When I was a younger man, it might have been easier to make certain these were all edge-to-edge wraps. Oops, see, now I just lost hold of it right there. I lost tension while I was wrapping that in, probably too busy thinking about what I was saying, and you can see how it just unravels right away. Anyhow, now that I'm older, it's a little harder to see this stuff, and sometimes I get a gap between those edge-to-edge wraps that I want to do. Well, if I put in 2 layers of tinsel, the second layer will be going across the first, and it generally will cover up any of those gaps that I get. Now, I'm intentionally putting a few in here just so that you can see that that happens. Another reason to use a lighter colored thread. And that you can see the second layer will go over the top, and it covers up most of those gaps so that you end up with just a nice smooth layer of silver tinsel, that second layer. I also don't have to worry if I get a little bit of a gap here, because there's silver tinsel underneath it that will show through. So in my opinion, it just helps the body look much more uniform and more even. I'm going to wrap this in all the way up to where the thread is and secure that in. 2 or 3 turns coming rearward. I'll have that secured in and trim away the rest of that tinsel. Now I'm ready to put in the belly. The belly is just some white bucktail. When you cut your bucktail, you don't have to stack it if you don't want to. You want to make certain that you're cutting it fairly sparse. You want to take any real short bucktail hairs out of here. And you can mostly pull all the shorter ones to get them fairly even. They don't have to be exactly nice and flat, but at the same time, if you want to, you can stack them. I'm going to place these underneath here, and I want these to extend probably about 1/4 to 1/3 of the shank length beyond the bend. That generally is going to be about the same length as the wing extending out over. Wrapping forward, not quite to the eye, about halfway maybe to secure that in. I'll trim away the excess. Now, sometimes your bucktail will flare, and one way around that a little bit is to come back and right about here where it's tied in, I'm going to get a couple of wraps right. I don't know if you can see it on camera. My thread actually comes all the way down to here, but right here is where that bucktail was wrapped in. I'm going to bring this around, and as I bring it to that far end, I'm just going to put a couple of light wraps on there to collect it. I'm not putting strong wraps in, otherwise you can tend to flare that. The other thing is with this bucktail, you want to make certain that it's not too dense, meaning you want the bucktail to be a little bit sparse because of the fact that if you have too much bucktail underneath, it may cause the fly to ride sideways or even inverted. It has some buoyancy to it. Next, we're going to tie in the hackle or the throat. And for the throat, I'm using the recipe calls for mallard flank. This is a great fly. In your bags of mallard flank, you usually end up with 1 or 2 large feathers like this that don't match up with anything. So doing, matched wings, mallard flanks, if you had a right and left of this one right here, you could get some nice slips out of here for some matched wings for some wet flies or streamers. But often in these bags, I find you don't have both of those feathers in there. They're selected and sold separate. So these are actually great for the throats on this, because all you're looking for is just the real long fibers that you have, I should say barbs that you have on both sides of this. So you'll peel those off, And you just like any of these other streamers, you're going to get 3 clumps. You're going to have one right underneath, and that's right at the end of the body. And I'm going to advance forward a little bit, and I'm going to trim off the excess. Stays right underneath. The next one comes up, and you can have this either the length of the one in the belly or a little bit shorter if you want. And this one kind of goes on the side and the bottom. The idea is that this will come up along, and it's covering up these thread wraps along the side there. Again, trim away the excess there. And then we have the last one, which will go on the same on this side. You can, if you put these in, and like this clump here, one, it's going forward because I didn't tie it in that tight. I get 3 wraps in there, and if it's not quite distributed on the sides here, you can push it down with your thumbnail a little bit to get those barbs spread out just a little bit more. What you're really looking for here is to use the hackle fibers, or hackle barbs, I should say, on both sides here to help cover up the thread wraps that were there previously. Now we only have thread wraps showing here that are going to show up in the headspace, and they're going to get covered up. So I'm going to clean this up just a little bit. This also helps to secure down the hackles. And being almost to the back end of the head here, I'm just going to tie in the wing. No peacock or anything. Sometimes she'll put a few strands of peacock herl underneath as part of the wing. The wing for the Embden's Fancy is one blue hackle flanked by an orange hackle, and then that is all flanked by a grizzly hackle dyed yellow with a jungle cock eye. So you'll have, the recipe will say 2 blue hackles, and that's the 2 in the center, flanked on each side by the orange hackle. That's 1 on each side, so there's 2 of those, and then flanked on the outside by a grizzly hackle dyed yellow, and that's 2, so there's 2 of each color there. I'm going to match these up, get those ready to tie in. I'm going to trim these so that I trim all the way down to the very base right there. This is the only not difficult part, but part that takes a little bit of getting used to. You're going to want to tie these in at the same time. So I'm going to put these on both sides, and the rachis of those feathers are just right on top, more or less on the hook shank. I want the butt ends that I clipped right behind the eye of the hook. My thread's going to come up and over and wrap back just a little bit to make certain that's secured in. And then I'm going to take a look at it. You can scooch this around very easily if it's canted to one side or the other. Now this is pretty straight on there, but what you're seeing is the feather itself. Sometimes the feathers will get a little bit of a curve in them. I think, though, it usually fishes just fine as long as the majority of the feather is just going right down both sides. Now I'm going to take my thread, moving forward, binding in more of those butt ends. I'm going to come up behind the eye and just fill this in just a little bit, because I'm going to put some black thread wraps in here, so I don't want to fill it in too much. I'm going to leave the white hang, and I'm switching over to my black thread. The head on the Embden's Fancy is black with an orange band. This is a Danville 70 Denier in black. I'm going to bring this up right behind the eye. Moving rearward, I'm going to trap in the black tag end here, which I can then trim away. And then I'm going to trim away the white. I still am not 100% certain on how Carrie Stevens actually did the head of her flies, because she had a bit of white that went all the way underneath, and I think she left it on there and just tied everything on top of it. You can leave the thread hanging there sometimes, and it acts as kind of a tool to push the thread wraps right up against each other. Now I'm going to bring my thread right back to the end of the first third here, and this is where I'm going to put in the orange. The orange is this is a uni-thread 8/0 and a pumpkin orange. Similar to what I did with the white, I'm going to bring this right up against the black thread, start wrapping that in. Get a few wraps in here to secure it, make certain that I don't have any gaps around the black, and get that wrapped in so that the orange tag can be trimmed away. And you'll want to trim the black tag, because otherwise the black is going to leave a little bit of black underneath the orange. Now we're going to take the orange thread and make certain I have any black lines covered, as well as any white. Come back about another third the length of the head here. Cover that up. Make certain I'm covered up over on this side. Leave that hang. And now go back to the black thread. This is the same 70 Denier black. This step you really just have to take your time with. Be deliberate with each wrap. Make certain that you're getting them right next to each other, so you're not having any gaps. Really take your time with it, and it just goes a lot smoother. If you try to rush it, it's just going to, things are going to get tangled up more, and it's just not going to go as smooth. Now I can finish wrapping in the back portion. You do want to try and wrap this in so that we're just covering up the materials. We're not bulking all of that up. It'd be very easy to just put in a whole bunch of extra wraps that aren't needed to make certain we have things covered up. This step I'm going to put in my whip finish. I like to put in a little bit of wax on the thread as I do this, so that when the whip finish goes in, that wax will help grip the thread and keep it from pulling out from under itself. About 5 turns in there. Tighten my thread a little bit. Everything looks pretty good. Put a little fly tight head cement on here. Going to soak down in there, seal up all those thread wraps. Now I'll come back and put 2 coats of a clear lacquer on here in a little bit, just to, it does give it a little bit of gloss, but I'm not looking for a nice shiny glossed head on this. The lacquer is just going to help protect the thread wraps a little bit and make it look a little bit more finished. So there you have it. That's the Embden Fancy. Interesting fly. The wing is interesting. I've done some others of hers that use this technique, 3 different colors and with a grizzly on the outside, but this is the first I've ever done with the mallard flank in the throat. Fun fly. Thanks for watching today. Thank you. thank you for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned a new pattern, at least a tip or trick here and there. If you'd like to help Dress Irons, you can like, comment, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things for the video. You can also head out to dressedirons.com where you can buy flies, tools, stickers, and merch, or you can join a growing community over on Locals at the Dressed Irons Fly Tying Guild. You can also donate to Dressed Irons if you want through the link at the bottom of the description. I thank everybody for their ongoing support, as it really does help the creation of these videos. But what's important is to remember, only fly tying. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.